If you're thinking about moving and you want to learn about what everyday life is going to be like in your new town, this is the place for you. On Open House, we sit down with local, top producing real estate agents to help you find the best places to live in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So if you don't want buyer's remorse and you want to find your dream town, we are here for you. So go ahead and book a free call with us and we'll help guide you to the area that is right for you. Now, let's jump in and learn about your new home.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Open House. I'm Mike, and today we're going to be talking with Brenda Denny, a local resident and expert in the Fairfax, Virginia area, and we're going to be covering everything from homes to entertainment. So, Brenda, thanks for being here today. And to kick things off, how long have you lived in the Fairfax area?
I've actually grown up here, so it's been over 30 years for me. And
A lifer, yeah.
I'm like a unicorn here. A lot of people are very transient, but I have always returned.
Yeah, Fairfax is kind of one of those areas where I think about a lot of turnover. Just the fact that, we're dealing with ostensibly a DC suburb, the influx of rotation, that like 2-year cycle of, okay, now there's 50% different population than there was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yes.
And you've just stuck there through all of it, through the thick and thin.
I sure have. I've seen the landscapes change and develop here. So I can tell you all the secret spots.
Yeah. And how long have you been in real estate?
It's about 3 years. So I saw all of the madness here from 2020. I was primarily working buyer side when I first started, and the market was wild. I had to learn how to negotiate fast, and I loved it.
What made you get into real estate?
So funny enough, I had a friend of mine and she took a picture of her screen and it was the real estate course. And she's like, hey, look what I'm doing. And I said, oh my gosh, that's so funny because I was looking at the same thing. And then we ended up working for the same company at first, and now we've met each other again after a couple of years, and now we're both working with Berkshire Hathaway. So really crazy how that works sometimes.
This sounds like it has the potential to turn into some type of, hero villain origin story. Like we both started at the same time, and now
she works a different market, though.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. We are the same office, but she's in a different area.
Now
so we can just help each other. No. I believe in abundance mindset and that we help each other rather than bring each other down, especially if we were friends at first.
So the population of Fairfax, I would imagine, has probably boomed over the past 10, 15 years. You're kind of seeing that with all of your DC suburbs. It's just inevitable. The DC will eventually expand, and then Fairfax will be DC West or something
In
like
a way,
that.
I've kind of felt like that for the last 30 plus years. Fairfax here, DC up here, right? And it's almost like a little extension, if you will, with all of the restaurants and the entertainment that we have. It's those people that live, here, but commute to DC.
And that's the thing. I think a lot of people are placing a higher premium on being what I would call like city adjacent. Like they don't have the desire to live in DC. They want their own space. They want their own home. They'd like a driveway and a garage potentially, things
100%.
like that. And that makes the commute a lot more palatable because you're like, no, like I want to come home to my peace and quiet. And I've definitely seen an influx of people kind of looking for that. A lot of people willing to commit to commuting further and further out because it's just worth it for them. They don't want to be in the city. That hustle and bustle is something that they're no longer interested in, and they'd rather some peace and quiet instead.
Well, what's really interesting about that is how 2020 shaped this environment, and I think really added the influx towards the suburbs as people no longer had to live close to the office and commute. And now hybrid is so much more prevalent in this day and age than it was even 3 years ago. The space is completely shifted in what's possible in virtual.
Yeah,
So,
there's definitely been situations I've seen where people are willing to basically double their commute time because they're going in half the days of the week that they were before.
correct. That's
And
exactly what I've heard. And partners compromise as a result based on the person that has the hybrid work schedule.
yeah, and it's like, whereas before, if you're going in, even to DC, someone might go, okay, I'm okay with my commute from Fairfax 5 days a week, but then they get to expand that and go like, oh, I could go another, I could go to Manassas because I'm only commuting 2 days a week. And it's
That's
like,
exactly what's happening.
you're kind of seeing those little microcosms happen all around the cities and expanding into the suburbs of such cities.
I've seen a huge influx towards Stafford, Woodbridge, Haymarket, Bristow over the last 3 years as people are hybrid working.
Yeah. And I honestly, it's a great thing because it provides a lot more flexibility from a buyer's perspective. Because,
Definitely.
there used to be these kind of hard parameters of like, well, if I'm working here, I have to be at least here. Whereas now it's like, you know what? Maybe I could be out here. Maybe I can.
And now I can buy a single family home instead of a townhome for the same price.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
100%.
you go between 30 minutes out to 45 minutes out. And now at 45 minutes out, you're paying for a single family house what you were paying for a townhome.
Yeah.
15 to 20 minutes further in, right?
Yep. What does the kind of median home price look in the Fairfax area?
So it was recently stated at about 635,000, and that's up as of recently. Despite all of our market conditions, it's still up year over year. And so that's one thing to keep in mind, that although we are having these discussions about how the market has shifted, right? In those areas that are still highly desirable and competitive in the Fairfax area, we still see multiple offer situations.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Your proximity is just going to skew those numbers.
Correct.
Whereas if you were to look at Virginia on the whole or something like that, it's just going to be dramatically different because not every place is that close to DC. So those numbers are obviously going to be skewed and not necessarily representative of the whole, but you also know what you're paying for,
and that's something that I want to explain to the buyer and say, look, at 30 minutes out, this is what you can get.
Yeah.
This is what comes with it. Do you want to have more of a city life experience? Do you want to have more close walkability to those restaurants and entertainment? Or are you willing to have a little bit more peace and quiet with maybe a small yard and your own space? Maybe even a garage.
Maybe even one of those grandiose luxuries that we call a garage around these parts.
I mean, it's 635,000. It's a question.
Yeah.
And whether a garage is going to be included in this area.
And that's always going to revert back to the kind of economics of an area. And you look at Fairfax and you go, okay, well, like this makes sense. The median price makes complete sense when you look at the average, the average income in that area is
about 130,000.
Yeah, exactly. So it's something where, as weird as it sounds to say, somewhere in the mid sixes is reasonable, but it is, considering the fact that if you live and work in that area, then then
you afford it.
Yeah.
Because it corresponds to the cost of living, corresponds to what people are able to afford and pay for. And that is directly correlated with the kind of jobs that are available.
Yeah. And not only do you have the high-paying jobs in the Fairfax area skewing that up, you also have the fact that there's a ton of people living in Fairfax who work in DC skewing that up. And they're in there and they're coming out to Fairfax and they're willing to pay more because they're making DC money. So it's all makes sense when you look at it, because I know some people can have sticker shock when they hear 6.5, and it's like, it's really not that bad. It's tough, it's tough to convince them that it is kind of the deal in that area.
Yes, and the thing is that it doesn't vary all that much within Fairfax County in terms of what you're paying for. These comps, yes, vary based on amenities, walkability, what kind of entertainment, what's around you, what are the schools like, how old are the homes, what's the population size, is it really dense in that area, is it a little bit more relaxed, right? And it does vary, but for the most part, 600,000 is going to get you something pretty good.
There is, I think, kind of a lagging effect with the market and the numbers on the whole. It's not that I necessarily think that areas like that won't be affected by the same market conditions that the rest of the country or state is. It's just there's always going to be a lagging effect. Yes, the prices haven't really dropped that much in the area despite the market conditions. Well, give it time. There's oftentimes a kind of built-in delay that happens with these things. You can see the interest rates go up, but the market doesn't change, and eventually, the kind of course correction has to happen, and you might see prices drop down into the mid fives for what you were paying mid sixes for.
Right, but then that's going to be balanced out by potentially the interest rate, as affordability has gone down by about 50% over the last year.
Yep.
And the thing is that this is just people being priced out of the market with those monthly payments being too high, as an effect of interest rates nearly tripling in the last 2 months.
And I think at that point it becomes infinitely more important to kind of have a firm grasp of what is actually affordable to you. And I think a lot of times a good agent will kind of steer you away from being house broke, which is something that's generally not a very fun experience, although
No.
I think it happens to everyone at some point in their life. Either you bought in house broke, or something happens to the house and it makes you broke. Like some house expense will facilitate you being house broke for a little bit. But that's where, to me, I feel like it's important to find an agent who knows the area, because it allows you to have a much clearer perspective on what's actually available to you.
What you're buying, what does the market look like? Is this area going to recover potentially faster than other areas within the nation? Are we going to experience as rapid declines as other areas in the nation? Right? These are the kinds of things that are different within an equity-rich area such as Fairfax County.
So I would say another thing that a younger me wouldn't have quite really understood, although older me understands the premium people are putting on having a good school system.
Yes.
And it was one of those things that, like I said, younger me, you move somewhere for your kids. I don't even understand that. But as an adult, it's much easier to go, oh, okay, like you have a much more of a vested interest in your child getting a good education, and a lot of times that can be, more of a front runner in your conditions for buying than a lot of other things.
I have seen that directly multiple times firsthand with clients, where either they're competing because they need to be part of a specific school system for a variety of reasons. They're competing because they want to get into a specific school system. They are competing because they want to stay within the same school system.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen all of these factors.
And Fairfax is a good area to be in as it pertains to the school systems.
That is 100% true, and it's home to the top schools, not only in the state, but in the country. We have Thomas Jefferson Science and Tech. It's #1 in the nation, and it's just a stone's throw away from here. It's within the city.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that you know, as a parent, it provides a certain, like, you kind of get to relax a little bit, because it's something that's kind of taken off the table for me, where you're like, okay, I know my child's getting a good education because I know that the school system's good. I know that the teachers are good. I know that the class sizes, like the teacher to student ratio, is not insane. So my child's getting a proper education. And again, all that kind of gets baked into the cost.
That's so true.
That is, it's not, I guess it doesn't make sense until you think about it, that like your children's education is baked into your home price.
It 100% is. And you know what? We've got 89% of the graduates from Fairfax County Public Schools seeking higher education. That's outstanding.
Yeah, that seems like a crazy number.
It seems like a ridiculous number, but that's a fact.
Yeah.
And then we've got #1 rated schools, not just for public schools, but also private school. And so #1 rated private school was Nova, and Nova is at Basis Independent McLean, and their ratio student teacher is only 8-1.
Oh my God.
Their SAT scores were average over 470, and the ACT is 33 average. It's the top 1%.
Yeah. So again, that's one of those things,
it's the best
like
you can get.
Yeah, it's like, okay, like if you were to get a house for $550,000 somewhere else, but then you end up having to pay $100,000 for your children's education in a roundabout way, it's like, well, what's the difference? What's really the difference?
That is a way that I haven't presented yet, but I might have to start.
You can take that. That's free.
Thank you.
I won't even charge you for that. All right. What about when it comes to, I mean, obviously the locale is going to have a ton of your restaurants, your bars, breweries, wineries. Like, there's just no way in that proximity to DC, and also that proximity to like the almost Virginia countryside, you're not going to have just a dirge of fun things to do as well.
Tons of sports, any sport you can think of, lots of arenas and attractions. All of the best concerts and bands are in the area. We've got Paradise Springs, tons of wineries, Bull Run, Caboose Commons is a popular one, Settle Down Easy. They're everywhere. You just walk down the street, you find another thing that you can do.
I will say that, like I said, as a Marylander who has generally looked down on Virginia, and with some air of superiority for no reason whatsoever, I was genuinely surprised when I tried Virginia wines and actually enjoyed them. Like, something in my head was like a roadblock going, like, it doesn't say Sonoma or Napa Valley or anything like that. You're drinking a Virginia wine, which sounds like normally that's what we call moonshine, but a proper Virginia wine, and it's actually really good. And that kind of spurned on me visiting some wineries in Virginia, and I was genuinely surprised. I'm like, this was here all along. Why didn't no one tell me this? I wish I had known.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah,
it's all ready for exploration. I've been here so many years, and I still feel like I could have more to see. Yeah,
it's that Virginia countryside was never anything that ever crossed my mind. And then I actually go to a winery, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot there's mountains here. No one told me we had mountains this close.
You drive 30 minutes out from here and you're in mountain territory. Beautiful landscapes. Fall is perfect for this kind of thing. Wineries in the fall, you just look at the leaves and it's outstanding.
Yeah. You'll never catch me dead at a winery in the summertime. That's not my jam. But fall and spring, 100%. Sign me up. I want some changing leaves. I want a pretentious sweater on. I want all of these things with my wineries.
One thing I feel like, as someone who's lived here forever, I take for granted that we have 4 distinct seasons.
Not everyone gets that.
And some people don't even consider that when they move to Northern Virginia, but we've got clear winter, clear spring, clear summer, clear fall. And don't get me wrong that sometimes Mother Nature just does whatever it wants during those phases. But for the most part, you can really tell what those phases are, and
Yeah.
more so than a lot of other territories in the world.
Yeah, I spent my youth growing up in Western New York, like Buffalo area. There was only two seasons. It was like winter and winter light. And winter light occasionally hit like 75 degrees. And you're like, oh God. How do people live at 85? I couldn't fathom down by the equator. Like, but that is one of the things, because they're my favorite seasons. And I think it's because I'm like a fat kid at heart. So it's like the only time I'm ever comfortable is either in the fall or spring. In the summer or winter, it just doesn't happen. But it's really cool to find those places in those seasons, because yeah, like right now, for instance, at end of October, going to a winery in Virginia sounds like a blast, because you're going to get all the leaves, there's going to be some random horses walking around because it's Virginia.
That's 100% the truth.
Yeah.
You're going to have somebody wave at you as you're driving by to the parking lot riding a horse. That just happened to me about a week ago.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like, how much wine did I have? There was a guy on a horse, right?
I'm like, this was before we started having any wine, so I know that happened.
You had man on horse as your baseline.
That was right. I'm like, okay, well, we're really in wine country now.
Yeah. All right. So is there anything else in the realm of kind of special events that happen in the area, be it like festivals or, fairs, things like that?
Definitely, I would say popular events, 4th of July, cherry blossoms, New Year's. We have the chocolate festival, and it usually has coffee. We've got all these food truck events and wine events and fairs, arts and craft fairs, like every single week, reoccurring in the fall at multiple locations. With basically anywhere in Fairfax County, you can drive about 20 minutes away, and within that distance, you are going to get some sort of craft fair.
That's great, because I've found that my wife can never have enough useless items from a craft fair that she never knew she needed, and now suddenly can't live without. That's
just fantastic. Don't tell her about that one.
Yeah, that's why she's not allowed at flea markets either. Same rules apply.
Just take her to the cherry blossom festival.
Yeah. You can't buy those, Plus, I do think that people really look for that stuff, and it's like, yeah, that stuff's always fun, but I think there's a certain catharsis you get because you're supporting people in your community, and you're supporting people who live around you, and that always just that makes spending $1 infinitely easier.
I don't even think about that aspect whenever I go to these types of events. I'm thinking about just sharing within the community, supporting my community, supporting local shops.
Yeah.
And just enjoying those little things that Fairfax has to offer.
Yeah, and that's that communal sense that you're just never going to get in a more densely populated, DC or something like that. It's just doesn't quite hit the same, That's completely true. And much in the same vein as, kind of wineries and the sites as it pertains to that, there's also a ton of outdoor activities in Virginia.
Yes.
The sheer amount of trails and rivers and lakes and just fun outdoorsy things to do is off the charts. I couldn't agree more. Meadowlark is one of my favorite stomping grounds. It's about $6 to get in, but with that small admission fee, you get so much beautiful scenery. They have koi ponds. You walk around in the springtime. The cherry blossoms are blooming. You don't have to drive out to DC and worry about the parking. It's really relaxed, lots of space. You don't feel crowded. You can take your time. People do weddings there and photo shoots.
It's fantastic. W and OD connector trail, tons of cherry blossoms blooming in the late spring, really close to park entrance and picnic areas. You can just walk all up and down Old Dominion bike trail. You've got bike trail that connects to the Meadowlark Gardens and down to DC.
Yeah, I like that. I like that aspect of kind of, you've moved to a place. Well, now you really get to explore that area.
That's so true. And you not only explore that area, but explore the area multiple times in various seasons and appreciate it in different stages. And that's one of the great things about Fairfax, because they decorate for the time of year too. And they really showcase all of that beauty in the winter time, and everything's lit up. It's fantastic.
So if you could give a singular piece of advice to someone looking at potentially buying in that area, what would that piece of advice be?
As a finance person, then I want to make sure that they're able to stay in that house for as long as they wish to stay, and they're set up with the right lender. That's going to be my first goal when I'm working with somebody, is to make sure that they understand what their budget is and that they are going to be comfortable moving forward with their home purchase. Or if they need to sell and buy, then we make a plan for that as well. Right.
Yeah.
But I think the number one thing, regardless of whether you're moving to Fairfax or someone else, is having that plan. And I feel like so many buyers these days, they see the internet and they just start going free range. Right. And they think that they have a complete understanding of the area and that maybe an agent doesn't have a lot to offer. But in this case, I've lived here my whole life, and I want nothing more than to see that my clients are well matched and happy. Yeah. And not just happy with their price, but happy with what it is they were looking for in those amenities in that space that they needed.
One thing that I tell people that I don't think people really take advantage of is I will often tell people to take a vacation. And what I mean by that is find an area, find a place you're thinking about, find something you're considering, take your time, go spend 4 or 5 days there, get an Airbnb, do whatever it is to feel like you have a little bit of immersion in that area. Meet some locals, talk to people, and really feel out, like, is this a fit or is it not a fit? Because I think a lot of people, you can go based on, you can have your square footage, you can have your bedrooms and bathrooms, you can have your proximity to work, you can have all those things, but sometimes all those things doesn't mean that the area really feels right to you.
So I'd say making sure that you understand what is important, whether that be restaurants, schools, entertainment. What is it exactly that you're looking for? What is it that you love about your current living situation? What is it you don't like about your current living situation? And then share that with your agent so that they understand how to help you best and how to match you. Because ultimately, that's my goal, is to see that that person is matched with what it was they had in mind. Sometimes people don't even know what that is. So we have to create that image together.
I've often found that also I tell people, find an agent that's okay telling you no, because I think a lot of people want an agent who's going to be a yes man, who's just going to be like, yeah, I'm sure we'll figure that out. We can do that. We can do that. And it's like, no, the bottom line is you can have your list of 50 things you want. You're not getting all 50. It just doesn't happen. Like,
it does not.
You're not some type of mathematical aberration where suddenly you get all 50. No, and you need an agent who's going to say, we can do this, but we're going to stack on this, or this isn't going to happen if we do that, and does a good job of communicating with you in that sense to get a better picture of what you really want. Because someone who's actually being an advocate for you should also be able to tell you, no, that ain't happening.
I totally agree with you. My goal is to understand what are the top priorities. Do you need a yard? Do you need a garage? Okay, what are you willing to forego to have the yard and the garage at this price point?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is that going to be 2 stories? Is that going to be 3 stories? This is the kind of conversation that I want to have. And if these things are not attainable, then there are other options, and a good agent is going to guide you to how you can build your dream home and work with a builder or a developer.
Yep.
Because it's not just what's available on the market, it's working with your market.
100%. All right. Well, Brenda, thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge of Fairfax with us. I think we all learned a lot. I think this was a very fun conversation. If you're interested in potentially buying in the Fairfax area and are looking for someone who will do a fantastic job of representing you in that process, make sure to check out Brenda's information below. And until then, we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.